Hi there, it's HulloAlice here with the Paletteful Packs YouTube channel, and I have the April Paletteful Packs Premiere Pack in front of me. I'm so excited to dive in and show you guys what's inside. So the April Premiere Pack is all blue themed, which is exciting. I love the color blue. And it is the Posca paint markers. I am so excited for this. I have heard so many things about the Posca paint markers all over YouTube, and I have never had the chance to try them myself, so I can't wait to try these. So let's dive into a more detailed look at everything that comes in the box. So I've gathered all of the paint markers that come in the box. There are 8 of them. We get medium, extra fine, and brush. So these are non-toxic water-based Posca paint markers, and they can be used on almost any surface. And I already see something down below that I'm super excited about that I think is going to test that. So let's go through all of these. These are alcohol and solvent free, they cover well, they're blendable, they dry quickly, and they can be laid over and over when they are dry. So we have the green Posca paint marker in the bullet-shaped nib. We have the blue Posca paint marker in the bullet-shaped nib. This is light blue. Then we have white, again, bullet nib, red in the bullet nib, yellow in the bullet nib, blue in the bullet nib. Then we have a black Posca paint marker, and this has a bullet nib as well. And then this Posca paint marker is black, but this one has a brush nib. So this one is a little bit smaller as well. This is a 0.7 millimeter, and these guys are 1.8 to 2.5 millimeter. So lots of variety here in terms of ability to do line art and all of that. I'm super excited to play around with these. Diving on in here, I see the next thing, which is actually a bonus item. There's some stickers. It says, channel your inner shepherd fairy with these lap stickers. They adhere to almost any surface, contrary to surfaces of any shape, and the bond becomes permanent over time. So some stickers to draw on, and then you can stick them on places. So that's really cool. Lots of unique surfaces. The next thing is a black canvas panel. This is a 5x7 black canvas panel primed with black acrylic gesso, and it's acid free, and it's got a board core. So again, really playing with the unique surfaces. The last thing in here is a wood panel by Art Alternatives. Now I apologize that you can see the reflection of my light, but this is a 8x10 wood panel with a 3/4 inch depth. It's an archival surface. You can use it for additional painting and drawing, and it's already like smoothed out and everything ready to go. And it's a birch surface with a pine cradle. So I am so excited. I have always loved working on wood, and I definitely want to try the wood. Before I get started, Paletteful Packs did include a little 5-tip user guide on the little card that you get that gives you some tips on how to use the Posca markers. So I will go over those in this video as well. Let's jump on into the art first, and then we can talk about the tips and how I found the paint markers to work. So let's get on to the demo. As with every Paletteful Packs, the first thing that I had to do was test out all of the supplies and see how they work and play around with them. As you can see, I made quite a bit of a mess doing this. The first 2 tips on the Posca pen little user guide was to shake the pen up and then to press the nib a few times to get the ink flowing. I definitely didn't have any issues getting the ink flowing. It came out right away, and so I ended up just pressing it into a piece of paper towel to absorb the excess ink so that it didn't go all over my sketchbook page. After a while, the Posca pens absorbed most of that ink, and then when I pressed it, a huge puddle didn't come out. It was just when I first opened them. I think that might just be because I'm at high altitude. I spent a bunch of time playing around with all of the different techniques that I could use, and since they are paint pens, I did try using them just as pens, but I also tried using them with a brush and water because they're water-based. So to start off with, for the background of my painting, I used the light blue, and I varied between kind of squeezing it out a little bit, squeezing out some of that excess paint, and then just scribbling, and I used a damp acrylic paintbrush to smooth out the paint, and then I went in with the blue and started adding gradients. So basically I would lay down both of the colors and then I would just use the brush to blend them together and smooth it out. And it worked really, really well, and it was really fun. It was kind of like I was thinking that this is a really cool portable way to carry some paint with you. And that was kind of the first technique that I tried out, and I was really just trying to figure out how these markers worked while I built up the kind of overall feel of the painting. So quick little note about what I'm painting. I just came back from Europe. I went to Amsterdam and Italy. It was so much fun. And during that trip, I was so inspired and in love with the architecture of Amsterdam that I decided to paint a very loose interpretation of one of the photos that I took. I cut out both buildings on the side and made it a lot sunnier and bluer and summerier, but it was a fun little like cartoon piece. So one of the things I wanted to try playing around with was blending the colors to see how well they would blend. Before I had blended just blue and white, and that was pretty simple, but for the buildings, they were more of a brown color. So I mixed red, green, and yellow, and the way that I found that best to mix them was to just apply them straight to the wood board and then use again a slightly wet brush to kind of mix them together. And this worked pretty well, and I just built it up in layers and layers and layers. It was a little patchy looking when I first put it down because I was using so much water, but I started to find my groove and I wanted it to look like bricks, so I just built up in a lot of layers and I really liked the texture that it gave. The third tip in the user guide did talk about if your pen stops flowing as much, basically put the lid back on, shake it, and then press the tip again, and ink should start flowing again, and that's what I did, and it worked really, really well. It also mentioned in tip number 4 that if the nib gets like really dried out or messed up, you can actually run it under the tap and rinse it out, and then kind of reset it that way, so I thought that was really cool. That way, if you really mess it up, you can just wash it off. So once I had this base kind of browny reddish tone down, I went in with the thinner bullet nibbed Posca pen in black, and I started loosely adding some details that sort of looked like brickwork. And then I wanted to push the entire thing back, so I decided to try another technique that I had thought might work, which is I took a little plastic palette and I pushed some of the ink into the palette and mixed everything up with a paintbrush, mixed in some water, and I used it as a glaze. This technique worked really, really well with the little paint markers, and I used it again a couple of times throughout, was just mixing them on the side in a palette. So they really are extremely, extremely versatile. This pushed the whole brick back a little bit. Then for the pavement, I started doing a base layer. I did a little bit of wet on wet, which also worked, and everything bled into itself really, really beautifully. And then I moved on to the white trim, which this was one of the first times I had really gone in with the marker just as the marker, other than when I was doing the bricks. Most of the other times I had been kind of using a brush or mixing. So I really liked adding some more defining lines, and this is where I felt like things were starting to come together a little bit more. Before this, it looked very messy. Then I used again the bullet nib black Posca pen to put in all of these windows. The whole building was covered with windows with these big red shutters, which is why I thought it would be a really great opportunity for me to draw with these pens, because there were so many bright colors in the piece, but there was also colors that I could mix and a lot of different textures, and I just felt like it was going to give me an opportunity to try all of the different ways that you could use these pens. I outlined the windows in the white, which as you can see is extremely opaque. It lies right over the black with no problems, and then went back over again with the black. These Posca pens are able to be layered. You just need to make sure that the layer underneath is dry, and then you can layer on top of them with no problem. It was super easy to layer. They do dissolve with water when they're wet, but once they're dry, I didn't really have any issues with them smudging or messing up when you added more water on top, which was really, really nice. It's not like gouache, it's more like acrylic. I added in some shines to the window with the dark blue and kind of used a hatching effect, and then I just went and brightened up the white on top as it had picked up a little bit of the red tones underneath, and I just wanted it to be a really, really bright white. Then came time for some more windows. Again, just using this little bullet nib. I wasn't really too concerned about accuracy here. I just wanted to get these like little windows that were going to be hiding behind the shutters in. Because the paint pens have been so opaque so far, I wasn't too worried about going over these with the red shutters. So I just drew each window basically completely. That way I wasn't gonna have to worry about where the shutter was gonna exactly end, if that makes sense. And everything covered it really, really well. So I think that the black canvas that also came in this will work really, really great with these pens because they did cover everything. Like, they are super opaque. I then used the yellow to add some detail and some shading just to the rooftop, and then went back in with the white to make those lines a little bit thinner. And then it was time to put in the shutters, which I have been looking forward to doing this part the entire time. I felt like I just wanted to be done with everything else so I could add in these beautiful red shutters and use this gorgeous red color that they included. The red, as you can see, is so vibrant and pigmented. Again, very opaque. I know I've said that a lot, but that is one of the things that really stood out to me about these, is how easily they layer up on one another. I did add a second coat on top of this just to help hide the wood grain texture a little bit and to really make that color pop. And I went in with a brush and filled in some holes that I had missed when I did my first little like go over of the brown, and then I also highlighted some bricks as well. And then I went back into the blue and decided to do some more detailing with the clouds. I needed to clean up some of the edges, and this felt like a good opportunity to add some more contrast and interest down below with the darker blue. I used the same technique as before where I added in the pens. I found that using a hatching motion worked really, really well, and then I just used the brush to go in and blend it. If the pen started to dry a little bit, I would just add a tiny, tiny bit of water on the brush, but you don't want to add too much. If the pens are dry, no amount of water is going to blend them anyway. Going back in with the bullet, which I was able to get really fine lines with, by the way, even on this wood, although sometimes the wood would catch the nib, I was still able to get pretty fine lines. I started adding in some little details to the overall building, such as gutters, a little lamppost, as well as outlining the building so that it would stand out more against the light blue sky. I was finally starting to feel like I was getting into the groove of using these pens and just like starting to understand how they worked and the different ways that I could use them, and I was really, really enjoying it. These pens definitely have a little bit of a learning curve when you start using them, but they are extremely fun and so versatile. I think that these are going to be a permanent addition to my travel sketching kit because I think that you can do absolutely so much with them, and because we were sent the primary colors, you really can mix so many colors with this. That was one of the things that I was excited about. If you first look at the colors, it may seem that you can only do really, really bright things, but you can actually mix the colors to create as many tones as you want. The last thing that I had to try was the brush pen, and I had the perfect thing to try with the brush pen. There was a big tree in front of the building in my picture, and I wanted to add that in so I could try the brush pen on the branches, and also so I could add in some pops of green and yellow in the front. The brush pen was so, so nice to work with. It is so smooth, and the paint is so black. It covered everything, and it was really, really great for doing a tree. I was able to get a really nice tapered end, and I was able to get very, very fine points with the very tip of the brush, so it is able to be very fine. When I was adding in the leaves, I discovered another technique which involved a spray bottle of water. I just sprayed the wood lightly. I was trying to blend out what I'd already put down. That didn't work super well, but some of the ones that were still damp spread out in this really beautiful pattern. Then when I added ones on top, they starburst because it was already slightly damp. So I found it worked really, really well if it was already damp when you put down the little dots, or if you sprayed it immediately after, and don't add too much water, and you get a beautiful soft, leafy, foggy effect. I went in with the black to add a little bit more definition to the tree, and so that you could see the little like branches poking through the leaves, and I think it came out really cool and expressive. One of the last things I had to do was add just a little bit of shading and definition to the pavement and to the canal in front of the buildings, and I just did this by scribbling on the pens and then just using a brush to smooth everything out. Some final details with the black pen and my signature, and that is it. It is finished. I hope that you guys liked this video and found it helpful. I hope that you have so much fun experimenting with your own Posca pens. If you're interested in getting your own Premier pack, then go and check the link down below in the description box. And subscribe to our channel so that you can see our next unboxing and demo. We'll see you next month, and have a great rest of your day. Bye!